have what is the best part of being on the board is to recognize students. And we will be recognizing Kaylee Robinson, Sarah Connolly, and Caitlin Chandler with awards for some extraordinary accomplishments. Gordon and their coach, Bill Dwyer, you said you saw it.
I did, Bill.
Bill's right.
Sitting in the middle.
If we could have our students up front.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we present to these outstanding young women who have these great accomplishments from Mount Sinai, going way above and beyond, we'd like to recognize again Coach Bill Dwyer as Coach of the Year. Second year he has won it. It's so deserved. And we're lucky to have him at Mount Sinai. He does extraordinary things for those student athletes. So if you give Bill a big round of applause.
Well, the first thing is they've all won multiple seasons, and they've all been in many, many state meets. So it all comes to a pinnacle by the end. So last year, the team won the county. We were third in the state in cross country. We won the league in the counties all 3 seasons, all 3 years. And that's not possible without, 3 extraordinary athletes. So to culminate, their spring track season, Kaylee was a state champion in the 400 intermediate hurdle. In multiple events in Suffolk County. Then we had Katie Chanrica was all-state in the steeple, and then she was all-American in the steeple. She took 5th in the national. Also MVP for Suffolk County for 2018 spring track. Congratulations. Again, they all ran on the state champ, the 3rd place in the states in cross country. And then Sarah Connolly, we went to the states in cross-country, winter, and spring track, and again, she was the state champ in the 3,000-meter race. Cross-country, she was a state champ again in cross-country state champ. Katie Chanrica was 7th, and they both qualified for the regionals, and then Sarah continued on to the national meet, where she placed 30th out of 200 best kids in the nation. Congratulations. All right, congratulations.
Keep it up, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're going to let the students go. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Congratulations again. We're going to change it up a little bit. We're first going to approve the minutes. May I have from Steve? We'll start on my right. Please.
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the minutes of the November 7th, 2018 board forum and the November 14th, 2018 regular meeting as submitted.
I second that.
Thank you. Any comments? All in favor? This way we can go into our presentation this evening. We have Brian Catlin, Pete Remeteras. I think he is here. He is here. D. Timo Williams on the Columbia Reading Program K through 6, and this way we can go right into the meeting. And Frank Laviano.
Is it on the
It
left?
just is.
Where's the vote? Sorry. Anyone have to?
Ken, is it on?
Can't Bob reverse.
Oh. It is on there. Pete's got it.
Good evening, everyone. I think I met a lot of you, but I'm Rob Catlin, the principal of elementary school. Pete Terrace over there, principal of middle school. We're going to provide an update. We did this a few times last year. We're just going to do where we start last year, where are we now, and where are we headed. I'll do the elementary, and Mr. Terrace in the middle, then we'll talk a little bit together again. So last year, when I came into my first year, this is my second year here, we introduced the concept of level literacy K to 4. For those of you who don't know, level literacy is you work with a student, you read a book with them. If it's too hard, you give them an easier book. If it's too easy, you give them a harder book until you find they're just right reading level. We were still using the Journeys curriculum, which was a textbook-based curriculum, but we got teachers familiar with the concept of level literacy, and we used it for intervention. Teachers assess formally 3 times a year, and we introduced, as I said, LLI as our main reading intervention. So we were doing the level literacy as intervention, not whole school as the program. We had 300 students last year who qualified for AIS, again, at about 730 kids. That speaks to a tier 1, which is the in-class is the main issue. We shouldn't have that many students coming out of this AIS. When we first did the assessments, in the lower grades, 45% of kids were on grade level, upper grades, 22 were on grade level. I don't think it was actually that bad. I think the reason it was that low, kids were not used to being asked those. They're very deep, for those who've ever seen one of the Running Records assessments, especially in the upper grades. They ask them questions about, like, why do you think the author decided to set the story in this time period? Why do you think the author decided to do this? They were not used to being asked those kinds of questions, so they technically did not pass. One of the good things is then it had teachers, okay, I got to focus on getting them used to answering harder questions about the text. In June, grade school-wide, 62% were on grade level as we left for the summer. Those of you who are teachers know there's this quote-unquote called summer slide, which is kids take 2 months off from school. Traditionally, they drop a little bit. When we started in the fall, we were at 53% on grade level, so we dropped about 9%. We thought it would be more. We were actually surprised pleasantly that it wasn't so bad. We've changed our reading program this year to Teachers College Reading, which is a differentiated approach. I used the analogy last year. There's that old joke, when the plane crashes and the black box survives, you should just build the whole plane out of the black box, people say. That's what we did this year. The interventions were working. We built the whole program around that. Now, students are getting daily differentiated teaching on their reading level. And AIS is now specialized by the needs of the student. So, we were just speaking before, actually, in the past, students would come to AIS, and what would happen was you'd say, okay, student's struggling, put them in a small group, we'll pretty much do the same thing we're doing whole class, just in a smaller group. Now, if a student is struggling, they come to our IST team, instructional support team. What are they struggling with? What's their area of need? Just Words, Wilson, Great Leaps, LLI, these are all different programs that target different areas of reading. Great Leaps is fluency. If you read kind of like a robot and your voice isn't smooth and you're not fluent. Wilson, Just Words, more based on letters, phonics, sounds. LLI is more comprehensive for comprehension. And so it's based on what your area of need is as a student. We'll then put you in that kind of an intervention group so you can get a targeted intervention that's going to move through levels as the year goes on. Where are we headed as this year has gone on? You start identifying new areas of need. There's a need for more Wilson intervention for special ed students in the upper grades. We are training new teachers this year in Wilson, so that hopefully in the 2019-2020 school year, it still sounds like futuristic when you say 2020, but next year will be 2020 school year. We can get more kids in Wilson groups for phonics. We're identifying that it is a need for us. There's also a need for a word study supplement that we're seeing. The program, I love Teachers College. It's a little bit weak on word study, to be honest, and it needs a supplement. We're piloting Words Their Way in a couple first and second grade rooms. The teachers seem to think it really hits the kids where they get more of a differentiated approach to spelling and word study and phonics. The kind of old school way to teach spelling is you give kids 15 words, they memorize it, they come back. That gives you the fish, it doesn't teach you how to fish. Memorizing 15 words does not teach you how to spell, it teaches you how to spell 15 words. Words Their Way is more of an approach of giving you certain suffixes, prefixes, teaching you in a more systematic way how to spell, how to read, how to decode. So we're piloting that. Hopefully we'll do it in more rooms by next year. But we start, when you roll out a program, you're never finished. You never think, we're done, this is all we're doing. You keep tweaking as it goes on. You notice areas of need. Like we said, you train more teachers in one program, you look for supplements in another way, so we're constantly trying to tweak. Middle school?
Okay, thank you. I say it every time, it's always nice to follow Mr. Catlin because I know what's going on at the elementary school, and we just visited the other day a fourth grade classroom, and I'm just, as a middle school principal, and I know I speak to Mr. Grable about this too, we have to work in concert, you know, every building. We're fortunate that we only have 3 buildings, an elementary, a middle, and a high. And it's really a blessing to be able to just walk, you know, 100 yards that way or 100 yards that way and visit classrooms and talk about the things that we want to do K-12. So I really want to thank him again for doing a great presentation and keeping all of us focused on where we're headed. Where did we start is we again formally assess students 3 times a year. We also introduced the level literacy intervention approach as one of our AIS procedures and one of our AIS strategies in literacy. Some data in September, we were about 70%, which is a little over 100 of 151 students were at or above grade level. In grade 6, 3/4 of students performed at or above grade level. And now in December, when we did our first round of benchmarking, we saw a little bit of a jump among all of our students. This is universally screening all of our students using AgeWeb. Our AIS students are benchmarked using the F&P, Fuentes and Pinnell method, and we're happy to see that all of our students that have been in AIS, 100% have demonstrated growth. So that's something that we are very proud of. We have introduced our level libraries and created a reading writing workshop period. A couple of years ago when we introduced the Teachers College Writing, we took away a little bit of time from reading so that we could focus on some of those skills. When we looked at what the elementary school and the direction they were headed in, we brought back, and with the trainer from Columbia, we worked in where we were able to pull back on a couple of our units from writing so that we can now bring in the level literacy libraries into our daily program. So we now have a reading writing workshop that meets daily, every day, in addition to teaching every subject daily, math, ELA, science, and social studies. So we're able to do a lot of the same things that Mr. Catlin spoke about with matching the Just Right books, and we're going to start using a lot of the same vocabulary, which is why we're doing the visits down to the elementary school. The reading writing workshop, again, alternates with the writing. During the reading block, students explore on-level, high-interest books, which are, again, in these libraries. We also, in an effort to create the bridge between the two, we're trying to connect it to the writing themes. So right now we're in journalism. We just went over to see Ms. Letterly's class, and they're doing a report on natural disasters. Similar to what we would be doing in journalism, we're going to be writing newspaper articles in and about anything the students want. One of the students just wrote about the California wildfires, so there's a direct connection between 4th and 5th grade. During the reading workshop, we're following, again, the same method that the Teachers College promotes, which is mini lessons. We focus on characterization, whatever mini lesson that is of that unit. We're doing the same thing, providing independent reading time, and then share time at the end, which, like Mr. Catlin said, is that time where students can talk about what they just read. Level readers are also being utilized in our regular ELA instruction. So we kept our Basil reader in Reading Street, but it came with, because it's a newer series, level readers. So, for example, if you have a 5th grader, you might be reading a story like Red Kayak. Red Kayak is the main story that the entire class reads. However, now there's leveled readers that tie to that same theme that's presented in Red Kayak that tie to a student's level, okay? Again, with this information that now we are able to get in lieu of the state assessments, things that really have changed over the last 5, 6, 7 years, we're able to get a little more authentic information to make sure that we're helping our students as much as possible, okay? As the year progresses, we're going to keep identifying needs to enhance this program. We're going to continue to work with the Columbia trainer. We're going to see if we need a little more intense, like Mr. Catlin said, individualized interventions, so that when we see a student who may not be growing as much as we'd like them to, we may need to go further. Things like Wilson, Just Words is still something that we use here in the middle school that they started over at the elementary school. And then we also are going to look to connect novels to those thematic units as noted on the previous slide, okay? We're going to continue to use AIMSweb as our universal screener and the FMP as our benchmarking to determine where students are. And one of the things that I'm really proud of that we started working on and what we're going to continue to do is a writing initiative grades 5 through 8. Students are going to compile a writing portfolio. We purchased binders for every single student in 5th grade. This is now the current 6th grade, has already started this. And they're going to leave with a writing portfolio with, in grade 5, a piece of those 4 units: narrative writing, journalism, opinion, and informative writing. And then, from the other pieces that they're doing, they're going to talk to the student when they do their conferencing. They're going to be putting those pieces of work into the writing portfolio. Boom, now it goes to the 6th grade teacher. The 6th grade teachers, one of the main ones is a college essay that we're going to start. We started, again, this is with the current 6th grade. They will be using one of our question prompts from the Common App application about an obstacle or something that you've encountered that you, again, was key to your success. And I will say that it was probably, at least for right now, the highlight of my year was when we had the college admissions counselor speaking to a group of 6th graders and how engaged they were when, this girl from Fort Lauderdale was talking up her school and the kids were asking such really great questions. I was really impressed with the level of questions that they were asking. And then they went back to their classrooms and they each wrote a letter to either a local college or a college that they had an interest in, and to see the amount of feedback that the colleges give even to 6th graders is tremendous. So they're going to be using that to write those essays. And then guidance counselors will also be introducing all of the 8th graders into Naviance. So as they grow, that essay is going to grow. They're going to improve upon it each year in 7th and 8th grade. And then they're going to be putting it into Naviance, which is a college kind of interest web-based program that is used up at the high school. Again, using that common bridge so we have from elementary to middle to high. All right, so these are just some of the things Mr. Cal and I put together to kind of show you what we just spoke about. Stamina.
Yeah, I tried to do like a sneak peek into the rooms to show some of the things going on. Those 2 pictures overlap. But what you'll see in a lot of rooms is reading is a muscle. You'll see like the teacher there said we read for 22 minutes today. The goal is to keep reading longer and longer and longer. In kindergarten, it's very short at the beginning of the year, but it gets longer. I was in a 2nd grade room the other day. They were reading for 35 minutes, and you would have thought they could have kept going for forever. At some point, they had to move on to a different subject. But they're building up stamina over time. Students go book shopping, so every week students replace the books in their bin with new books, which is fun because you're not reading the same books every week. You can choose books you like, but you also cycle in and out of different books. You'll see students self-assessing, so again, those overlap a little bit. Just right books, too easy, just right, too hard. Yes, we assess them, but when you're at a library or you're at Barnes & Noble, you're not always going to go by book level. So we're also teaching them to just say, is this book too easy for me, too hard for me? You'll see the reading work they do is things like they're giving them little assignments in their books. Are you stuck on a word? You can try these different strategies. Again, this is all about individualization. When I'm a teacher, I saw a 2nd grade teacher the other day. She had all those prompts basically on Post-its, and when she was meeting with kids, she would give them the Post-it that corresponded with what that kid needed. So they're individualized assignments based on what that kid needs. You'll see also the spelling and the coding is a little more embedded in the work. As we said, we're not doing the old school spelling lists that much anymore, but they're looking for blends and diagraphs in their books. They usually have cutesy themes in the lower grades. Kindergarten is like reading superpowers, and first grade are word detectives. So it's these fun ways, but really they're decoding and spelling words. There's also a theme approach, like I said. There's superheroes in kindergarten. For writing, you'll still see very similar lessons, reading, writing, connection. This is how they bring stories to life. These are charts, opinion writing. One of the things about thesis statement and 3 reasons, I was in a 4th grade room, saw the teacher reading with a kid, and he was organizing his thoughts about his book. It was a nonfiction book into what I learned about the book, and then supporting details about what I learned. And the teacher said to him, that's kind of like what we do in writing, when we do a thesis statement in 3 reasons. And that is also exactly what comes up on the 4th grade test. So whether they take the test or not, there's a lot of opt-outs, but we are authentically teaching skills that will pop up on the test that they're just doing naturally, and you would hope that if they took the test, you wouldn't even have to test prep that much, because they'd just be doing those kinds of things naturally anyway.
And just using the vocabulary. I'm in again the 4th grade classroom, and I'm hearing words like synthesize, and that's the type of thing that we want to make sure students are coming to us with. Okay, you just took all this information, now take it and pull out what's important, and be able to do that at the age, at such a young age is really going to pay off dividends. And we want to just make sure that we have that connection between the buildings. With the cross-campus observations, the San Columbia trainer in grades 3, 4, and 5 works with all of the teachers in grades 3, 4, and 5 to continue the ongoing discussions about making any purchases that tie with this type of instruction. And bottom line, it's a team effort. And I'm going to ask, Dr. Timo, we asked her, hey, you have something that you can put together. She's our information guru, to kind of see, now that we've had the writing program a few years, what can you tell us about where our writing is headed? And I think she'll...
Well, Mr. Comateris came up with the idea of cohort based on graduation. I was trying to figure out how to depict this on a slide. For cohort 2022, which is the first part of the slide, those are students who've never received the writing program. Those are students who are in 5th grade. The blue is a baseline. The red lines are year 1 of the Teachers College Writing Program. The greenish is year 2. The purple is year 3. Last year was year 3. They were in 5th grade during our baseline year. Those students, as you can see, their performance stayed level and then dropped in grade 8. For cohort 2023, they were, during the baseline, they were in 4th grade. They received 1 year of the writing program in 5th grade, which is the red line, so they increased their score that year. And they had shorter increases the following years. So there's some evidence that maybe the program is helping out in some way for those students to be successful. These, 2024, are the students who were in grade 3 during the baseline year, so received no Teachers College Writing Program then. The following year, they had another year. In 4th grade was their first year, 5th and 6th. And you see a steady increase in their writing scores. This is indexed to the constructed responses on the 3-3 assessments. The constructed responses require written language responses. So these are the students that are receiving full credit, ready to partial credit students. For cohort 2025, they were in 2nd grade during the baseline, so there is no blue for them because there are no scores from 2nd grade. In 3rd grade, they started out above where our previous cohort during baseline started out. And then they showed steadily increasing scores as well. So the results from the students who've been receiving the program show increasing scores and show a trend toward improvement in written responses on the 3-3 assessments. Again, it's only one snapshot in time. It's a very quick snapshot in time. We also take a look at other assessments that we did in the classrooms. And this one really isn't that helpful. These are students who were in grades 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 are where you see the results. Any questions? Yeah.
What is the mechanism that you're going to use for the students that are special education or struggling to identify, so they don't fall through the cracks. So what is the actual mechanism or to identify these students and then make sure that those students are now being addressed in terms of the fact that they're not keeping up and they are struggling with the reading program?
I could start. To me, the same mechanism for everyone else, which is progress monitoring. Teachers assess the students formally 3 times a year. They hand the data in to me, we go over it, we look at students who are below grade level, special ed, gen ed, doesn't matter. Any student who's struggling, we're looking to come up with a support plan. We have the instructional support team. So a student might come up at a meeting with the instructional support team. This student's struggling, what's going on? Then we're looking for the reason why that student is struggling. Like if it was reading, is it comprehension, is it decoding, is it fluency? And trying to get them in an appropriate intervention that's working for them. And for us, it's not about necessarily on grade level, not grade level, like Mr. Pramateris actually said. It's about growth and progress. So even, we might be just as worried if a student is above grade level. Let's say they're supposed to be reading an N, but they're reading an O level, which is higher. But they're an O the entire year. That's also not good. We still want that student to make growth. So whether you're low, medium, high, the mechanism is growth. And they're handing in data multiple times a year to us, and we're reviewing individually with teachers and as an instructional support team.
In addition to that, students have goals on their IEPs. So there's data that's taken toward progress toward those goals as well. So if there's a reading issue, a writing issue, there should be goals on their IEP that would allow them to show growth or index growth.
Right, but the IEP would have to be adjusted then within the school year to effectuate the changes that are happening with the student if they're not keeping up on grade level during the special ed program.
Correct. You can have a CSE meeting anytime to change an IEP goal.
But my point is that who is going to identify to the parent, for the parent to reach out to the special education department to then say, I need another IEP meeting? Is that going to be done unilaterally by the
The teacher can
school?
also do
Let me
that.
finish,
The teacher
please.
can identify.
Let me finish, please.
Sure.
Who is going to make that call to the special education department to tell them that we need to do an IEP?
The teacher works as, if the child is a special education student who's receiving either resource room or is in an inclusion class or self-contained class, the teacher is the first line to be able to say we need a meeting and go to the psychologist in the building and request another meeting.
So the teacher is going to tell the special education department that we need to do another IEP meeting.
After discussing it with the parent.
Well,
it's
so
agreement.
I think you're talking about our RTI, our
Right.
tiered approach. So after, like Mr. Catlin just said, if we don't see growth after the first 10 weeks, if we don't see that growth, then we're going to say we need to have it, at least, and I think I can speak for the elementary school, an instructional support team meeting. That's the first step to a CSE referral. Is that what you're talking about? 'Cause
No, I think he's talking about when a student's already.
Does a student have an IEP or?
The student has an
The
IEP.
student has one.
Right, so once
They're
they
gonna,
get,
then
right.
we're gonna, then the special education teacher of record does progress monitoring with the student, and at any time, again, they can call a CSE or communicate with the parent to have a CSE meeting to make any adjustments to those IEP goals, like Dr. Tebow just said, in order to give more interventions. Or specialized programs or something like that, like Wilson.
So the burden is on the teacher to reach out to the special education department to identify that we need another
Well,
IEP.
they work with the
What's
child on a
parent?
daily basis, they would be best equipped to do that.
And I would say in the elementary school, there's multiple, I should say that, there's multiple safeguards in place. Sometimes it comes from the teacher, sometimes it comes from administration, who's looking at data going, what's going on with so-and-so, I'm noticing there's no growth. Sometimes it comes from the parent. The parent might reach out to the teacher and say, I'm worried, I'm working with my son or daughter at home and I'm noticing. There's multiple avenues it could come from, and hoping that by having these multiple, like we say, multiple measures, like ideally, usually I would say honestly it comes from the teacher. The teacher would bring it up with the instructional support team. Even if the student already has an existing IEP, they can come up to the instructional support team and say, I'm worried that the student is not making progress. At the same point as administration, we review the data, so we might bring it up to the teacher and say, I'm looking over your levels and so hasn't moved, what's going on? And then again, sometimes it comes from a parent.
But the student being with the teacher being with the student on a daily basis would be the first line to flag it.
Is there a way to link the benchmarks to PowerSchool so that the parents can view them the 3 times a year that they're done? And also, is there data on grade 7 and 8?
I did include 7 and 8 because they were never in the writing program.
No, the benchmarking for the Concept Now and Ames Web.
Is there a way to put it in PowerSchool? Maybe. That's a good question.
It's something that's come up a few times
I
that.
mean, a reading level, yeah, we have a Lexile or a reading level, certainly, but anytime you can email your teacher and they have that information.
Right.
And I can tell you that looking at net access on Power School, parents, they're just not on there, so email is the best way to do it. In terms of 7th and 8th grade, we have scheduled periods, and I can tell you that we have 80% right now, just talking off the top of my head, because this is a K-6 presentation. There's about 80 students that are on grade order above grade level, again, having that approximately 40 students that are in scheduled AIS, receiving some type of level, again, the leveled approach. We just spoke about this earlier. The targeted approach is really the key, is that now we have groups based on levels. We're not just doing worksheets or doing more ELA. We're targeting the interventions. That's why we're seeing the growth that we're seeing. Yep.
Hi. I have a current second grader who actually has the same teacher that my current fifth grader had in second grade. And she's tremendous. But I will say that in the elementary years, she probably gave the most homework that my older son had out of all of the teachers. So I just want to say it's so refreshing to see now. He comes home every night, he has a few math problems that are just practicing the skill and reinforcing what he learned that day, and then he gets to read a book on his level that he's excited to read about, that we can like sit together, we have the time, because we're not just doing busy homework, to talk about everything about that he knows about sharks and this and that. So I absolutely love the changes at the elementary school, and I'm so thankful that we finally are doing those things. So.
Thank you.
Couldn't hand it to me, Pete. Hello and welcome. I'm surprised we have more people tonight than we had in warmer, nicer months. So thank you for making it out and joining us tonight. Here it is, budget time already. And this will just be a brief discussion of what we'll be doing from January to May. We'll live, breathe the budget. So let me guide you through what you can expect, and you might pick and choose the meetings you want to attend, or you may attend all. But Brad and Monica, and next month they'll co-present with me. I'll bring them up. Right, Brad?
Don't vote.
Okay. January 16th, at our meeting, we're going to talk about the Board of Ed money that they need to function, the central administration, that's my office, the office of the superintendent, insurance, the liability insurance, which tends to go up for all of us every year, central printing, and then one of our favorites, I know it's Bob Sweeney's and mine, BOCES administrative charges, what we pay BOCES to use one of the services that we pay again. So just to use something in BOCES, you pay for it. Transportation, probably the biggest part of January's presentation, technology and debt service, which is lighter because of the high school bond coming off our service. It's 25 years, and you'll see a change there as compared to the past. February, we'll be talking about instructional areas, our curriculum, what we need at all of our schools to make it go. Pupil personnel services, that's special ed, which is an item of concern for everyone. Guidance and ancillary areas, those are adult ed and driver ed. In March, and in March, basically, we also get an idea of the tax levy actually from the state. So that's a solid number we have in March. What we do starting next month, you know, it's a guesstimate. And if you've been with us, we guesstimate pretty well. Linda does a great job with that, and we're pretty much on target. But we don't have our exact numbers until March, when we talk about grounds, maintenance of our buildings and athletics. Salaries and benefits is the biggest piece of the budget, of course. What benefits cost for our employees, what the salaries are. But again, that's the month we get a good clue of what our budget looks like, because we get the tax levy from the state. And then in April, they'll give us our state aid figure. So basically in January, we function without those guessing, tax levy, state aid. So this is where in April, our budget gets very real. And then in May, of course, the vote, and that may sound like a long way off, but here's Christmas, and that's not far away. Now, Bob and I were talking the other day about governors making statements about foundation aid. Sometimes I really don't understand what he's talking about, Governor Cuomo. But we know what foundation means to Mount Sinai. Not a heck of a lot. Because the people who benefit from foundation aid are much less wealthier districts than Mount Sinai. So if you look at that graph, we are on the left. I'd like to be on the right, but we are on the left. And what you can see, but the exact number for Mount Sinai in aid, foundation aid, is $12,813,000. One of my former places of employment, William Floyd, on the far right. A considered very low wealth district, and having attended a number of budget meetings in the county, they always tell you the low wealth districts get the foundation aid. And our 12 million compared to William Floyd's 87,600,000 that they receive in foundation aid. The districts close to us in wealth, Miller Place is 13,900,000 in aid, Rocky Point's 18,700,000, but on the far end, William Floyd, 87, Middle Country, 64, Longwood, 64, Patton, 48. So foundation aid for us in our budget really doesn't mean much. And if the governor talks about it, it really doesn't impact our budget. These districts on the right side, having worked in the last two, they depend on that money greatly to make their budget happen. So we have to see, and as Pete Van Mindelen likes to point out to me, the Republicans have no seat in the New York State Senate any longer. So the governor and the Senate are solid Democrat, and it'll be interesting to see how that affects Long Island in our budget this year. So the April state aid figure is going to be very important to us, as well as the tax levy in March. So it's going to be an interesting year. Different, because I think the paper actually said Republicans ran New York State Senate for a century, and now it's Democrat.
Not directly. 10 years ago, it was Democratic majority.
Democratic?
And then it went back to Republican, but now it's
Yeah. But we had friends that tried to have the wealth evenly distributed before. Now it's solid Democrat, so we have to see.
Gordon?
Yes, Pete.
So I just, and also that, if you look at that time frame, that's when we had the gap, you know, in that time frame.
When they changed all the formulas.
Well, they changed the formulas, and obviously the economy was bad, but again, in that particular situation, with that particular, you know, politics the way it is, we don't have representation out here like we did in that 2010, 2011 timeframe. It was a classic example. We got hit, we got the gap, Rob will refer to the gap, you know, we got the gap elimination adjustment. That's what my concern is going forward. I don't know, like you talk about in March and April, I don't know. I would be ecstatic if we got what we got last year, honestly.
You're all right, it's more than we thought we were going to get. As Bob said, our aid in the past few years is really getting back what they owed us anyway.
Correct.
So it'll be an interesting year. I know you're excited about it, so you can join us every month as we proceed next month. Any questions? That's basically, we'll get into it in detail in January. Okay, we're finished with the presentations. The board would like to return.
on the agenda? Otherwise, we'll move on. Yes, Brett?
But I see that there are 3 speech teachers retiring at the end of the year. I'm curious why so many speech teachers seem to be retiring at once, and are there going to be replacements?
When they're scheduled to retire after years of service, they go. We happen to have an older faculty at this point. They determine what year they're going to go. If they want to stay in the system and abide by the contract and get what's due to them and a payout, they have to do it at a certain age. Right now, it seems like they will have to be, their positions will have to be filled. But we will look at the numbers as we go through the spring and see if they do it or not.
Any other questions? Let's move on to the personnel. Lynn? Retirements and resignations. Why don't you do the first 3?
Okey-doke. Retirement, Michelle Gaffney. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation for retirement purposes of Michelle Gaffney, special education teacher, effective June 27, 2019.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any comments? All in favor? Number 2, Lynn?
Retirement, Maureen Conlon. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation for retirement purposes of Maureen Conlon, speech teacher, effective June 27, 2019.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments? All in favor?
Jill Kutner. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation for retirement purposes of Jill Kutner, speech teacher, effective June 27, 2019. 2019.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Wood. Any comments? All in favor? And Pete, would you take 4 through 7?
Sure. Number 4, retirement, Catherine Sazovich, I apologize. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation for retirement purposes of Catherine Sazovich, speech teacher, effective June 27, 2019.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any comments? All in favor? Pete, number 5.
Number 5, retirement, Glennis Now Ritter. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation for retirement purposes of Glennis Now Ritter, science teacher, effective June 27, 2019.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? 6, Pete.
Number 6, resignation, Anita Leonard. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation of Anita Leonard, school district aide, effective December 8, 2018.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? And finally, number 7, Pete.
Number 7, retirement, Linda Saram. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation for retirement purposes of Linda Saram, Director of Special Education, effective January 19, 2019.
Second.
Thank you, Lynn. Any comments? All in favor? Each of these teachers, administrators have been a backbone of our district for a long, long time. And they have served many of the students. They have served them well. We are proud to have been with them and proud for their opportunity to move on and retire. And we look forward to the next chapter of our life in this district with them, and we wish them well in their next chapter. Ed, non-instructional B.
Custodial worker 1, Eric Swedberg. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointment for Eric Swedberg, currently a substitute custodian, as of January 2nd, 2019 through February 28th, 2019, as a custodial worker 1 for leave replacement, step 1.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor? Carrie, number 2.
Sure. Buildings and grounds consultant Dwight Lucas. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of Board of Education hereby approves the appointment of Dwight Lucas, building and grounds consultant at an hourly rate of $60 per hour effective December 1st, 2018. Said services will conclude no later than September 30th, 2018.
May I have a
Second.
Thank you, Lynn. Any comments? All in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. Steve, School District 8.
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointment. Christina Sullivan, calendar sub-8, effective January 2nd, 2019, in the area of School District 8 and compensation step.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Lynn?
Committee on Special Education. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education has no objections to the following special education recommendations and approves the authorization for the funds to implement the special education programs and services consistent with such.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Ed believes being paid by the seconds to
No, I haven't got my voice
Yeah,
on video
yeah,
too
very
often
good, very
lately.
good. Any comments? All in favor?
Just let it be known.
So now you get obsolete equipment.
Obsolete equipment. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby declares the following items as obsolete and approves disposal as listed.
I second that.
Thank you, Pete. Any comments? All in favor? Carrie, impartial hearing officer.
Sure. Impartial hearing officer, resolve, the Board of Education hereby appoints Gary Hughes Esquire as the impartial hearing officer for case number 520451 with an effective date of November 15, 2018.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lynn. Any comments? All in favor? Pete, Carrie, Anne Marie.
Anne Marie.
Anne Marie.
Donation. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby authorizes HMH Journeys materials as list attached to be donated to the Gomez School in Liberia, Africa.
May I have a second? Any comments?
Yes, thank you, Bob. The Journeys books, the former reading series, the Basil Reader that Principal Catlin was referring to, that did not have level reading for our children and no independent practice where the teacher would read to the students at 20 minutes at a time. And the students listened to a video rather than active reading. We felt that it was doing a disservice to our students, so we moved on to the Columbia reading program. We reached out to numerous districts who do use Journeys. For example, Miller Place does. My son has Journeys, much to my disappointment, and asked if they wanted to have extra textbooks. They would not. And our assistant principal at the elementary school, Elizabeth Hine, her daughter is in the service. She's an Army Ranger working in Liberia, and thought she could put some of our books to good use. And so asked the board if they'd be kind enough to donate them to those young children in Liberia. And the board's kind enough to do that.
All in favor? Good use. Any questions or comments? How are you, Monica?
Not good, thank you. The buildings and grounds consultant, what is that for?
Dwight has served as in that position previously before his retirement. He is being used as a consultant for mechanical issues, for knowledge that he has gained over the 40 years that he served here, as to sometimes how these things are jury-rigged, how they're repaired, how they're working and not working. He has a font of knowledge that is useful for us to impart and create a manual over time of these items so that we can have the benefit of it without having him here. He knows the dirty I didn't want to say he knows the dirty little secrets, that's trouble. But tell a quick story of that. One time, one of the boilers was no good and was going out, and he got 2 containers of oatmeal and threw them in. And because it seized up all the holes, it worked until they had to be replaced. So there are skills that he has that maybe, in time will be lost, but we hope we're going to keep them as we go forward.
In January, who's going to be the director of special education?
I'm sorry,
Who's going to be the new director of special education come February 1st?
We're just going to post the position. She'll be here until January 31st. We'll post it as we have to do. We'll see who will apply. And there'll be a rigorous interview procedure. I'm sure the board would like to take part in that as well. But it's a very important part of the district.
So who's going to handle on the interim basis until you hire somebody?
Excuse me?
Who's going to be handling it on the interim basis if you hire somebody? That process could take 30 days, 60 days.
I'm
90
hoping
days.
we have someone in place at that time, but we'll step up, and I think we have personnel in districts who can do that. And our psychologists in each of the buildings and the principals may have to fill in briefly. But I have some people I know that are in other districts that I can reach out to, but I'd like to put it out there to see what is out there. If we have a retired director of special ed, someone who was effective where they were previously, maybe there'll be an interim until we find a permanent. But I would not like to rush this choice at all.
Other questions? Brian?
What's next relative to the bond?
Bond is, to take a step back, the bond is a process that the community votes on. We respect that vote. And that was a very straightforward vote, and you have to respect that. Bond is concluded. That was 2.5 years. If Ed corrects me, it might be 3 years worth of work, 2 years of the committee. You can't just uncouple everything. It wasn't a wish list. So we go forward now with understanding the vote, looking at what our next projects will be. We're in the process of looking at the budget for this year and how we are using the capital reserve. Last July was a return of a capital reserve. We hadn't had it for 2 years. We're looking to see how we can develop that further and looking to see what projects are ongoing, what projects we need to do, and where we will be thereafter. I have a... Yes. We will get 3.
Hey, how many other people asking questions?
We have to
relative to the bond and how the information was put out there. Having been here at every meeting and looking at the information that, the questions that were raised late in the process, a week or 2 before the vote, I think the board has a communication problem with the community. There aren't a lot of people that show up here. And as you guys have said, Facebook isn't everything, but that's how many people communicate and how they learn their information. And I say you guys have a problem because there seem to be a few very vocal voices on Facebook that were saying a lot of inflammatory things, which may or may not have been true. I'm not going to comment on that. But raised a lot of questions about how the board is spending our money and the board's priorities. And being at every meeting here, I feel pretty confident you guys are being good stewards of the taxpayer funds. But clearly, there's a lot of people in the community that don't feel that way. So I would urge you to reevaluate how you're communicating with the community. And Lynn, you put out a letter fairly late that tried to dispel some of the things that were being questioned or misunderstood. And I think that was a good effort, but I don't think it went far enough. There were a lot of questions specifically about why the high school roof has been leaking for a number of years and hasn't been fixed yet. Where has that money been going? Why is there a fund balance that the comptroller called the district out for as being too high? Where did that money come from? Why are we over budgeting? And if you come to these meetings, you understand a lot of that, but a lot of people don't. So I would suggest to the board that within the confines of what's allowed for social media, find ways to better address specifically those types of questions in a direct manner. If there are questions being asked about why wasn't the roof fixed, then either a board member or the official district Facebook account can say, the roof wasn't fixed because of this. We can save money if we combine it with other projects, and that's the most efficient way to use taxpayer funds. Or we had a different priority. Trying to address those in a proactive manner, I think, will serve each of you as a steward of the school district and the community as a whole. So, once again, I hope you look at ways you can better communicate to the people who don't have time to come here and kind of sit back and are gathering information from social media and local news.
I appreciate your suggestion, Brad. I know in your own role over at Civic, it's all about communication, and we take it to heart.
Yeah. As a board member, we have to be very careful how we make responses on social media. And I myself, obviously, have been on social media and have made factual information available, like dates and times of meetings or whatever it was. But then you end up finding that there are those who want to engage you in a negative dialogue. And they push, and they push, and they push. As a professional, in my other career, but I also believe I'm a professional here, I am not going to participate in that kind of dialogue. It's inappropriate, and it's not something a Board of Education member should be doing. I tell people to come to meetings, I tell them to call the district office, I tell them to read the website, but I'm not going to be poked at by certain people on Facebook. But I will still continue saying what I believe. But I do think that you open yourself up. And there have been times when I've just taken down everything I've said because it had to end. And the only way to end it was because I was not there anymore. But they do enjoy going after board members who speak up. And it's a very negative atmosphere, and we don't want that. All we can do is hope and pray that people will bother to come to the meetings, to listen only, or read only, or believe only the things that are on Facebook. It's absolutely ridiculous, and I realize people do it, but there are fake facts there, and they're not providing the whole story. And I don't know how we could ever put it out in that kind of medium to have it be, not end up to being this side, this side, this side, arguing back and forth. So, I mean, we talk, and we visit with people, and we'll stop in the supermarket, and we, but I don't know how to use social media without getting...
Well, to say, we have to look at how things progress. And there are rules that are affecting us that may not affect others. But we have to look at how in today's society, everybody's wickedly busy. Maybe 25 years ago, you had people coming to board meetings because, first of all, people got home from work at 5, had their dinner at 5:15, and would finish at 6. How many of us out there who are watching it on Facebook, we posted, they may not be getting home. They might not be home yet or getting off the train. I think that your point is well taken. I don't have an answer. But I take it from where it's coming from, that as we progress in this process, our role is to find ways to get as much information out into the public as possible and allow them to make decisions based on that. A learned public is a good community. If they vote and they don't, this isn't about winning and losing. Remember that some people may not have wanted the bond because it raises their taxes. They have a right to that vote. That's why it's done that way. But I take to heart your comment. I don't have an answer for it. I don't know how clearly to do it, but I think whether it's presently, let's move out of the bond topic, about reading, about little things that we do. We have to start looking at technology to help us. Someone had suggested, can we put something on PowerSchool so it's easy to see what the reading level is? Well, that's new. That might be a link, that might be something new to do. If we don't try new things, if we don't get that out there, the information doesn't get out. We rely on smaller and smaller groups in doing this. We've done the process differently in the 8 years I've served on the board. And I think we should continue to change, and we should look at new ways of doing it. Maybe we should have more regular postings on Facebook. Doesn't have to be a debate, it's just, here's some information. Get it out there, run off with it. I like to learn from things from the past, and I think your point is well taken. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I think it's great that the board is doing the video and the live streaming in that part and getting these meetings out to more people who can't make it here. However, are you open to answering questions from people that are watching on Facebook Live that can't be here, or have a message box that people can send you questions that you answer at the meetings, you know, whether they ask them anonymously or not?
Well, we do.
So,
What I think you're speaking of, we have the jot form process, which wasn't, that's an example of, we didn't always have that. When I first was on the board, we didn't really have that, and that was something we added to do. What I think you're really referring to is there a way to do the answer and question live. I'm going to just say for tonight, I don't know. I don't think it's, you know, these are the things that you have to think about in terms of how would you do it? Could you, if the meeting's coming on such and such a date, do we remind people to send questions in ahead of time? And, sort of like the caller has asked the following questions. We smile, but it's a neat way to get the answer and back and forth. We run our meetings differently. If you go to other school districts, you have to fill out a card. The board will read that card, and that's it. There isn't an answer. I like the process that we do have a conversation. Even if we don't agree, we have a conversation. I think it gets a little bit further, but these are the little tidbits and things. How would we get things out there? What newsletters could we get out there that would be more helpful to the public on all kinds of issues? The reading programs, the budget as we go forward, because that's what we'll be talking about in 3 months. Could you come out and vote? So maybe this is something we need to start thinking about.
May I add another comment?
Let's take this question back.
Does the district have like a PR person?
No.
Don't some districts have that?
Yes, those who get really big foundations.
Because
We
I
don't.
feel like, sometimes like you guys break down who votes on the budget by like age groups?
Yes.
Do you have that for the bond?
Yes.
Yes,
Can you share it?
I don't know it yet,
Oh.
but yes.
So I feel bad because I know how much time you guys spent on that. And I almost feel like if the bond was $5 million, it would have gotten voted down because I feel like people heard that you got cited for having too much money in the reserves, and that was it. Where if you could have explained somehow to the community in people's terms of why that happened, maybe the bond would have passed.
We did spend money on that. We spent time on explaining that audit. And I'll go on the limb and say 9 out of 10 districts on Long Island were audited for having too much money.
Yeah, I know.
If
How
I
did
may
you do
add a
that?
comment, that year we were audited with excessive unallocated fund balance. 2 years later, we were cited for being at risk for financial deficits. So
How was it shared with the community that, like
we
explaining why we
did
got
speak to
cited?
that at that time.
Sorry?
We
When
did
that-
speak to that at that time.
At a
that
board meeting?
The state had cited us for excessive unallocated fund balance, and then literally 2 years later, cited us for being at financial risk for our budget process, of not having enough money available for budget.
But I'll just build on Brad's comment. Sometimes things crop up, right or wrong, and methods of getting that out there help. I don't know if it would have changed people's opinion. It's a difficult time for everyone. This is your first year where you don't get deducted more than a capped amount as a salt tax. That's going to be a factor in people's minds in terms of what they're doing and how they do it. We had lots and lots of discussion about the process, and going forward, we're going to have to look at our budget, the growth of our capital reserve, how we can use that, because we can put money into a capital reserve and move forward in terms of moving that out into capital projects. That's what we're currently doing. And see where we stand once we wash some of that out, how this works out, and we'll see if what we can accomplish and what we need to accomplish. Yes, sir.
Yes, you have to understand, this is my first meeting here. I've been in Mount Sinai for 22 years. I'll tell you the reason the bond failed. People my age. I'm 70 years old. I just retired. I'm the middle class. You have the upper areas of Mount Sinai that have wealth, and I understand that. But you have also people like myself that now is on a fixed income, never had a pension. I'm on Social Security. I don't have a lot of money. And our taxes, our school taxes, not just in this district, it's throughout Long Island. And nobody uses the word school taxes when they say property taxes. Our school taxes are the highest probably in the country anyway, all over Long Island. All of young people are leaving in droves because they can't afford to live here. So when you want to propose a bond for $25 million, I just got my tax bill yesterday. My taxes went up another $259. When is it going to stop? You're going to put retirees, young people, there's only going to be the rich and the poor living on Long Island. All you people are going to be out of jobs because there's not going to be any kids going to the school. We can't sustain the tax burden that we have for the middle class, whether it's a rich school district or it's a poor school district. That's what's going on in Long Island. That's what you board members have to, how can we get the budget under control? I'm an ex-businessman, and I can tell you, I ran a very small business, very profitable, because I knew how to keep my overhead down. I knew how to keep my expenses down. And if the school districts would run their budget like a business, we wouldn't need to have a bond. And you would have had the money put away for all those things that you needed in the bond. The school, elementary school, you said is 50 years old. There's no reason that the 50-year-old school should need repairs. Those repairs should have been being done from decade to decade to decade, and so on and so on and so on. And that's the reason the bond failed.
Well, that's my point, in that there were people who voted no, people who voted yes, and people who voted no had reasons that were, such as this gentleman, on expenses. And I did say that in our meetings. We got down to the bottom line. I said it at the Civic Association. I said, then you come down to your decision personally and make your decision in that voting booth. And in the end, we have to respect that, how you vote. That's my opinion. In terms of, I run a business. I'm not an employee of the district. I run my own business. And you can't run a school district as a business because the state doesn't allow you to. And the state, as you see, decides how, constitutionally, they're supposed to support education, and New York is the only state in the country that does it this way, and none of the other 49 states do it this way.
Okay.
They tax your property. They don't tax the city of New York property. So if I wanted to live on right off of Thron's Neck by the yacht club and have that house, I have a 3-story house with a pier and a water view. My taxes are $600. These are the concerns overall of how the state funds education. But in the end, the question becomes, when people voted, they voted for a lot of different reasons, and I have to come to terms with how I respect the process. The bond vote was a process of putting together a meaningful amount that was started at well over 50 million, was worked on by members of the community, 20 or 30 people, who looked at all of the different options, then coupled them together in terms of what was the most aid we could get by adding them together into groups so that you attach the student and the student's building so that you would get as much aid as possible. And that's where the committee came to a recommendation of a number. But then that becomes, the process is the community decides that. Do we want that or not? And I disagree with you in that these are routine repairs over the years. They are not. They are sizable repairs that if you owned your business, if you owned the building that your business was in, there's only so much you can prepare for when all the heat system has to be replaced.
But you're a school district, and here's my question to you. You're right. If I own my own business, I'm not going to my neighbor next door and asking them for money, okay? What I'm saying is whatever repairs or whatever was in that bond, which I looked at, why isn't there a contingent fund that you start from the very beginning when a building is built, saying I need these necessary changes over the years, you put it in some type of a fund where it's got some growth, and then 50 years later you don't come back and say we need a $25 million bond. I do it in my household. I didn't buy my house and say, geez, I'm not going to save any money for repairs down the road. I'll just go to my neighbors. My neighbors will help me pay for it. And this is what I'm saying. You're taxing us to death. My school taxes are $7,500 of my $11,300 tax bill. That's ludicrous. That is ludicrous. And you're driving us off Long Island. That's what I'm telling you. It can't work that way. You can't sustain Long Islanders on middle class at those tax rates. There's something that's wrong that the school district isn't looking at, not just Mount Sinai, all over Long Island. And guys like me and my neighbor, and that's why we're here tonight, we're retired. We can't afford, everybody says, why don't you move off Long Island, go down south? Why should that be the answer? I love Long Island. I love living in Mount Sinai. Because my taxes are $7,500, school taxes, I gotta move? That's not right. That's not the answer. And that's why I'm mad. And I'll vote the budget down every year. I'll vote the bond down every year. And I'll go on social media and I'll do all those things until we get it right. And I am a mad taxpayer, I gotta tell you that. And whatever you tell me tonight is not gonna make me better because my taxes are still $7,500. That's ludicrous.
And thank you for your comment. Any other, yes?
I just, with all due respect, thank you, because I know, I'm sorry.
No, I saw, she was just reminding me, I didn't see over this, sorry.
Working on any public budget, and school districts with public budgets, is extremely challenging. I do it day in and day out myself. And I am someone that is still extremely frustrated because I have come to meetings over the past 10 years. I think I'm a familiar face to most of you up there. I was not at a lot of the bond meetings, not able to go. As you said, things happen. But I was a bit frustrated with the bond, twofold. One, the piece that this isn't the first time we have been cited by the state comptroller. I don't read the article in Newsday. I read the comptroller's report and your responses, going back to the response from 2013 and the response from 2018. I'm not going to beat that dead horse because I think most of us in the room probably read that. But to the point that the gentleman made before, I think there is a communication issue, and I watched it happen at this meeting tonight. The superintendent prepared a graph for us about funding to other districts. Now, I happen to know most of the school districts in Suffolk County. So he compared us to William Floyd. William Floyd that has approximately 9,000 students, and Mount Sinai that has under 3,000. I'm not gonna, 2,800 in that range, right? I'm kind of in the right range. So when you look at funding, of course, there's going to be larger funding to a much larger district, and that becomes very confusing to people when you're trying to compare apples and oranges. And that is a communication issue if someone really doesn't understand the size, the structure, and the socioeconomics of another area. So that's just something that I wanted to point out that does become a real point of confusion. And I don't know most of the people in this room, but I know neighbors that don't even know where William Floyd is. They grew up in Port Jefferson, Mount Sinai their whole life. They're not going to Mastic, you know? And that's not a knock on Mastic because they have no reason to go there unless they're going to the beach. So I think it's something just to be mindful of that people go, oh my God, yeah, but that's apples and oranges.
I believe I stated that there was a different, you are classified differently. We are an average wealth district here. People know William Floyd, I know it very well, and I know the poverty level.
Sure.
But I don't think your aid, foundation aid, is based on population alone. Linda?
Not just population, no, that's part of it.
The difference between, the point is that foundation aid is a new term in the sense they're pushing that issue. If you read it from the regent's point of view, from the governor's point of view, it's touted like they're doing a great job. And foundation aid is different than what we used to be given to school districts. What we've seen over the years is a continued decrease in the aid overall. And it is a misstatement. Foundation aid is not available to every school district on an equal basis. And that is out there too. Newsday comes and tells us that. There's no commentary in any of the controller's reports about the fact that for 8 years in the gap and elimination, the state kept money and redistributed both within the state and gave it to other places in the state. And then 2 years ago, began a small distribution of it, not all that we were owed, and gave us what was a percentage of what we were owed. And that's why you see there was a period of time that our fund balance was decreasing, which had been our plan. Then you saw an increase in our fund balance. That came mostly from the gap elimination money and the need to move that into a capital reserve. We did create a capital reserve in July. We funded that capital reserve, and then in May we distributed that to do some of the projects, and we will continue to do that. The use of the capital reserve and the capital projects allows us to segregate that money just for capital projects. Once it's in there, we can't use it for anything else, so you can't just, let's just assume everything. But that is a fair point. The newspaper does it and offers a commentary. We're offering it as an illustration. We're different sized school districts, but frankly, in the end, the state has stopped giving real aid to the schools. It's my opinion, it's their constitutional obligation to do so, and they leave it on the shoulders of the community property owners. And they're required to carry all of the burden, including all of the state mandates that private businesses don't have, all of the requirements that they have with regards to contracts. When we want to buy something, we spend $4,000 to $5,000 more than what you would get on the street if you paid for that. That's my opinion. And I take your suggestions, I take Brad's suggestions in terms of the commentary, but we're also this district and not the entire state to change the financing system that really is not working right. The fact that the school districts on Long Island are all at this level of taxation does not make sense, because what it's doing is it's driving money into the coffers. There's not the same process upstate, there's not the same process downstate, but that's what the politicians do in Albany. I take your point, I think it's fair. I take Brad's point, and I listen to all of them. But I also respect what people did in the voting booth. Yes, sir.
How many eligible voters we have in Mount Sinai?
98, not 2 or something.
How many people voted?
1,100 and change.
I agree with Greg, I have a communication problem. Is that about 12%?
Same as the budget.
Same as the budget. It's been this process for 8 years with the highest amount, 1,600 people. I don't think it's all communication. You know what I think it is? I think it's
I
after.
spoke to a lot of people after the budget. I probably emailed and texted about probably 150 people myself, and most of them didn't know there was a vote.
Keith, we get on any budget, and each May, 1,500 to 1,600 people. And there were people I actually foiled who voted. And there were people where there were family members that I know that were both, and maybe one spouse voted, maybe the other one didn't. They might have had their own, issues, maybe work or things like that. But people knew, there were people there votes there, that some people showed up to vote, and other family members didn't. I mean, that's just a fact. I'm just going by what I just, discerned from the information. So, but that's the reality. Again, any May, 1,500, 1,600, and the no vote of 6 and change, that's always there. But for whatever reason, good or bad, I'm not commenting on it, I'm just going based on numbers.
Any other questions?
My turn?
Yeah.
Okay. I have two different pieces of information I want you to share. Brad, regarding communication, the superintendent recognized that many of our employees live in the district. So he made arrangements, and I went with him to visit each one of the schools to speak with the faculty, the aides, etc., explain the bond, answer questions, do whatever we could. And then we also had an evening meeting for anyone from the school-based organizations who wanted to come, and we did a one-on-one kind of presentation that way. So, and then Bob went to you, and, we certainly have been trying. With regards to taxes, I've lived here since 1975. Before that, I was in Cumswaw. And when we moved here, there was a group of people who wanted to do proper community planning so that the tax base would not just be on bedrooms. However, at that time, as hard as we fought, there was in charge of the Civic Association someone who felt very, very strongly about no commercial property in my backyard. I can't fault that person, that was their own personal view, but they were in charge of the Civic Association. The Civic Association does not have that same kind of approach now, but for all of those years, from 75 until, I don't remember when, but more recently, every project that was put up, a commercial project, was fought by the Civic Association and turned down. Now, commercial properties pay more taxes. Here's an example. I was reading the New York Sunday Times one day, and I saw a house advertised in Manhasset. I don't know whether you're familiar with Manhasset. Good schools, you know, nice houses, and Miracle Mile, which stretches east and west with all of these fantastic stores and offices and so on. I said to my husband, we can live in Manhasset and pay half of the taxes that we are paying right now and have the same size house. We are paying 12, 13,000, and we would have paid 8 there, living with very good school district and so on. But it's because of the commercial property that they were able to do it. There are other school districts around here who have more commercial property, and that helps to lower your taxes because they pay in. And what do we have in commercial property? Next to nothing. And so, unfortunately, the burden is on you and I and the rest of the people who are homeowners here. There's nothing we can do to change that, except maybe in the future with the Civic Association's assistant being more receptive to commercial development in an appropriate manner. I live with this every day. I was afraid when the bond went up. I wasn't really sure that I was going to be able to put it in my budget. But, you know, but it is because of the demographics of this district that we have high taxes. There's nobody else to pay except you and I. Thank you.
Okay, my comment's actually to you, sir. I get that you're angry, and you know, I'm 40 years old, so I still am working and I have a long time to go, and I have little kids in the district. But I will say that with somebody with little kids that has a long time to go in this district, it's frustrating because I come to these meetings every month, and so many other people do. And then, like you said, you've lived here for so long and you've never ever been to a meeting, but you'll vote it down every year. You'll vote the budget down, you'll vote the bond down.
The reason I never been here.
So, I work in a school, my husband works in a different district. I think that our town is so desirable because of the people that live here. And I'm telling you that there's a lot of things that other school districts have that we don't, that were in that bond. And what's going to happen is people are going to start catching on to that and not want to live in this town. So when it is time for you to resell your house or whenever that time is, it's going to become more and more difficult, and our values of our homes are going to go down because our roofs are leaking, or our science labs are terrible, or our locker rooms are terrible. Our facilities are terrible compared to neighboring districts.
You're so wrong what you just said, okay? You're so wrong about that.
Could we
First of
focus
all, I didn't go to the meetings
board
because I was
board
working
meeting?
100 hours a week.
And so am I.
All right?
Ladies and
100 hours a
gentlemen,
week. Are you working 100 hours
I
a
always
week?
think everyone has a good comment to offer, and in the end, this is an important part of our community, the schools. It's the center of our schools. The issue becomes, how do we communicate better? What do we do with our budget? And to recognize that, frankly, the board only has so much it can do to address the cost of education in the state system. And that's how I'll sum up some of our comments tonight, and I appreciate those comments. I have a motion to adjourn
So
the
moved.
meeting. Second. All in favor?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Councilman President.
Chair.